So to restart, this is our part of our artisan conversation series here at Washington Studio School. Tonight is Models Reflecting Life. We started doing these during the pandemic when we couldn't do our in-person artist talks. And this one tonight is part of our August Free-for-All. August Free-for-All is where we do as many free events open to everyone as we can. And this year we have 19, and they're scattered all over DC, many of them here in our building, but also many on location at various museums and parks. So for those of you in other locations, the entire month of our Monday night online drop and drawing figure sessions are also free. So if you haven't had a chance to attend any of those, we do have 2 more this coming Monday and then the final Monday. So it's the 21st and I think the 28th. And if you are not on our, the best way to make sure that you are able to attend those is just go ahead and RSVP so we can send you the link that gets you the link automatically. And we'll be sharing the link for that in a few minutes later on in the chat. So a little bit about who I am. Well, I'm Sheba. I'm the registrar and administrator and model coordinator here at the Washington Studio School, and I'm currently a model myself. And tonight's topic is Models Reflecting Life, and the 3 models we have with us are Mo, Jason, and Jay. So with this year's topic, our trio will be discussing how working as a life model has reinforced or affected their sense of self-identity and allowed for an avenue of self-expression otherwise unfulfilled with, potentially other aspects of their life. At the end, we will have a Q&A session, so please do, we do want you to be involved in the conversation as well, but please save your questions for that time. You can ask them in the chat, and at the end, I'll go through and ask some of those other models. We are going to be discussing some sensitive topics this evening, and there are some things that our models are not, we've decided not to talk about. So if one of your questions, if we don't get to one of your questions, or if you feel like we're omitting it, and maybe it's one of those topics that we've decided that is just not appropriate for this evening. Before we get started, I do just want to say that these public programs could not happen without the generous support of the DC Commission on the Arts and Humanities. Also, the Joanne B. Shorey Fund and the many individual donations made by so many generous supporters over the years. We're so grateful, and now we're going to get going. So let me introduce you to our speakers this evening. This is Jason. I've been friends with Jason for many years as a model and known him both on and off the model stand in the real life, not just as a model coordinator. And also here is Jay. Jay, I'm more recently introduced to. They were highly recommended to me by multiple other model coordinators and artists in the area. So I was very happy to welcome them to the Washington Studio School community as a model and to join us in this conversation, because as soon as we started talking, we realized that there were many things that we were just itching to speak about further. And, what better time to have a conversation than in front of a huge live audience when it's recorded, right? Also, go back to gallery and find, this is Mo. I've also been friends with Mo on and off over the years. No off times with being friends. I just mean that there are times when we've interacted more and interacted less, partially due to COVID, partially due to backing away from modeling. But I'm very happy to welcome him back to the Washington Studio School modeling community and to tonight's talk. So without further ado, all of us were very eager to hear about and to discuss how you all started with modeling. Jason, do you want to take it from there?
Sure. My name's Jason. I'm a DC area art model. I've been modeling since early 2008. The COVID pandemic put my modeling on hold, so I'm looking to restart my modeling career after a several-year hiatus. I'm really excited to be here tonight. I've done acting before, and yet for some reason I found myself more nervous in front of a virtual audience than I do a real one, if that makes any sense.
And Mo, what you started with modeling?
Hello, everyone. Thanks for showing up. Really appreciate it. I started for money.
Didn't we all?
All right. So my friend had always invited me to his group in Baltimore, big group. And I always was like, no, that's not gonna happen. And then one day I needed money and I said, okay. And that's how I started. Money.
Well, money brings us to a lot of things.
Absolutely.
Jason, you have an interesting story about how you got started with modeling. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, it's honestly kind of one of those, chicken or the egg type things. I bumped into a friend of mine who was in my grad school class, and I was telling her about Yelp. I was on Yelp at the time. This is back in 2007. So I was so excited about Yelping that she eventually joined the site. Months later, I read a Yelp review that she had about an open drawing session. And something about it just stuck in my craw that I was thinking, that sounds really interesting. And of course, me being ignorant at the time, thought, well, I can go ahead and sit in a chair for 3 hours and you're going to pay me. That's great. I'll go ahead and do that. So I reached out to her. She said, hey, I've got some, artist friends. I'll put the word out. Sure enough, I filled in last minute for a drawing group and I emailed my friend and said, hey, thank you so much. I'm really excited about this. And she said, yeah, I got the email from the group. I'm going to be there. So, being drawn in the nude for the first time by a friend of mine who I had previously only known through taking a couple of grad school classes was a little bit of a trial by fire. But I went ahead and did it, and I enjoyed it so much on the cab ride home. All I could tell her was like, I got to do this again.
Jay, I know you have a very you had a you had a visual element to share. I'm going to go ahead and pop that up on the screen.
Yeah, so when I was in college, I would put calendar pages on my walls. And so this one was one that me and my roommate found randomly. Um, and it just mesmerized me. Still does. The life model is, yep, in that corner or in that area where Shiva was referencing. And there's a class full of women or femme uh, presenting people that are drawing at their easels, but there's this man that's walking by that's staring quite intently. And so just the whole dynamic, the art of other figure drawings on the walls in the background, I just was really enchanted by the whole thing and kind of put it on my bucket list as something that I wanted to do, not necessarily as a career, but just to do it once. And similar to Jason, once I actually did it, I was hooked.
That kind of segues us into the topic of why do you love this? So, what, you were hooked, Jay. Jason, you were hooked. Mo, you were reeled in by money. So, why did you stay? What made you last this out a little longer than just a gig or two? What hooked you?
Oh yeah, great question. I kept doing it. Oh, here's why. This is actually great. I moved up here to get more money. I'm from Baltimore, and then I didn't think about doing it full time. I'm a personal trainer. I was a pro bodybuilder. I was doing fitness modeling, and I'm a pro cook. So I kept putting out the resume, and of course the rent here was a little higher. I kept putting out the resume, kept going to interviews for personal trainers, and they were like, "Sorry." And the only people that responded, and they responded quick, were artists. And then my calendar eventually, like really quickly, my calendar got filled up. So they gave me the most love, you know. During that time, we figured it out, my management and I, the personal trainers during that time, they looked at it like when they saw me, like I was going to secretly be training people outside. I was like, why aren't they hiring me? I've been doing this for 30 years. So, and then I retired, as you know, and I came back now strictly for the love. I just love it so much.
Jason, what got you hooked?
For me, it was, I mean, the money was certainly a good consideration. I was just getting out of grad school at the time. So every little, extra dollar helped. But it was, it's tough to explain. I remember after that first gig, I was sore. Like if you've ever gotten a good, workout in, lifting weights, but it was a good kind of sore. It was just this glow that I felt, not just physically, but almost spiritually, like a high that I want this again. I enjoyed it. I felt for something that was so utterly potentially terrifying, and frankly, it was while I was waiting around in a bathrobe that the art coordinator lent me because I was a last minute substitute for somebody else. Um, that it was terrifying, but at the same time, when I got done with it, it was invigorating, and it was that feeling that I had to rekindle. I wanted more of it.
I'm gonna throw some more art up
It-
here in a second. And Jay,
It's fun that you
sorry.
mentioned the spiritual aspect because for me, Jason, when I'm on the model stand, it's the only time that I'm really able to just clear my mind and meditate. Sometimes I have a tendency to go into negative thoughts, but just that room full of people with all of this creation going on, it's so positive and such a confidence boost. And I think that's what kept me coming back time after time.
Do you have a favorite piece that you sent me, Mo, that shows
A favorite piece? Wow, I can't say that. I see all the artist names
I know
here.
it's a dangerous. Do you have
I
a
literally
piece that you want me to start with?
Let's start with the most recent that Jennifer did of me with the tennis things, please, with the tennis theme.
Okay,
There's just so many.
there are a few. I'm gonna.
I think
This one?
no, the one with the yellow background. It was from this Saturday. Yeah, I slipped that one in by accident. Sorry.
Oh,
There it is.
oh.
There it is. All right. All right, Sheba. So you said give my review of it, the rundown.
Well, you selected these images as ones that you would like to share, and I just want to hear a little bit about the stories behind them.
Let's do it. All right. As I mentioned, when I came back to modeling recently, it was strictly because of the love. And I enjoy so much making everyone happy when I perform well. So Jennifer invited me to last Saturday to pose costume theme, only short gestures.
Pyramid Atlantic
That's it.
sessions.
Hmm?
These are the Pyramid Atlantic sessions on
Absolutely.
Saturdays.
Absolutely. So, and she always gave us so much love. I had to go all out. So my theme was nautical. Had to look like money. So I had all these outfit changes. She said, don't change the outfit, Mo. It's too much. We don't have time for that.
Yeah.
You got 50 outfits. Just choose one. So I was really quick in the breaks. And then I couldn't find a golf club. She brought a tennis racket. She said, I got a pink tennis racket. I said, that's the bougie feel I'm going for. So I had my headband, and then in that wardrobe change, I had studied the tennis player's outfit and the tennis player's pose. And I got those two poses. The one was planned, and then I just had to look at, and then I was like, what would I be doing looking at the racket? And that's the other one. That's my story. And I enjoy that sketch.
Awesome. Jason, is there something you want me to pull up that has a good story for you?
Actually, if you could scroll down a little bit more, actually, well, there's a couple of them, but if you could, the picture of me in the light purple shirt sitting next to the portrait of me,
Mhm.
that was the result of the very first modeling session that I did. It was with Sarah Griffin Thibodeau, who I think has moved back down to Louisiana. Um, but that was, again, talking about the intangibles, the fact that, I sat in one particular pose for several hours, and then I saw what somebody actually created of me almost out of the ether, that I was like, this is really awesome. So that's always been a really special one for me, because it was my first gig. And I've done countless sessions since then. But this is, the very first time you model, that's one of those gigs you're always going to remember.
This is fresh-faced baby model Jason.
Not so fresh faced anymore.
Jay, I know you sent me several fun images. Did you?
Yeah, if you'd like to pull up the two that were from the same artist, just different days. I don't know if you can maybe open another window so we can see them side by side.
Possibly. You can also just these
Yeah.
two. Okay.
Yeah.
I can quick switch.
So if you want to stay on the one on the right for a minute.
Sure.
So this was the first time that I met this artist, and this was back in Cleveland. I started in 2018, and he had a tradition of giving the model his first sketch of them. And I thought that was really kind. And so, this felt like a really well-observed rendering of just me. I thought it was also kind of fascinating that he didn't really focus on anything below the neck. It was just there, but not really in detail, which obviously sometimes is the exact opposite. And then I saw him again months later, and I don't know if I was just tired or what, but I feel like this looks like something from Picasso's Blue period, where they're just super gaunt. And I thought that was fascinating, that it could be the same model, the same location, kind of the same lighting, same medium, and same artist, and completely different pieces of art.
And how does that affect you seeing these different versions of yourself? I mean, you mentioned what it makes you, what it reminds you of, and that it's, maybe something that you brought to it. But do you feel like if you're bringing something to it and then the artist does a rendering, how does that affect you afterwards?
So for me, I see each of the pieces as a perspective. So if there's, 10 people at the drop-in, there's literally 10 physical different perspectives throughout the room. And so it's kind of cool when you're walking around and you can see the angle of the pose change. And then I also know that everybody has varying levels of skills. So whatever they see and how they put it on paper is just so dependent on a lot of different factors. And so for me, instead of viewing it as myself, I just view it as the opportunity to see what other people think or what other people see. So I think I went home and ate because I was just like, all right.
Mo, do you have any pieces that you feel like show different versions of yourself here?
Let me think which ones I gave you. And let's go ahead and rock with Gavin's gray portrait. Might as well get to it. Let me click so I see you.
I don't,
It's there it is. Yeah.
Yeah. I was like looking for the Gavin highlights.
Exactly. Well, I personally and a lot of people feel that Gavin is a beast and one of the best in the world at everything, plein air. And I agree with that. And also, he is a very nice person. He's strictly business, but he's very nice and very loving. So that's my man. He's looked out for me so much and has said so many. And he has the only painting my mom has ever bought. And it's in the dining room. Yep. So Gavin, I've been fortunate enough to be drawn by him several thousand times, and Gavin always makes you look better. He makes me look way better. And and every time is slightly different. As Jay expressed, sometimes, you know, the same artist, I can look like, man, I had a rough morning or something. So that one he captured, I feel like just whatever was my best qualities. And I feel like he, as always, which is why everyone goes in for portraits, he took my best qualities, my inner and my outer, and he just went haywire, and it was a quick demo. So that one really is special to me.
Awesome. Yeah, I have some Gavin moments myself.
Yeah, absolutely. He's the man.
All right, I'm gonna stop.
Yes,
share a
Gavin
second.
does teach
Yeah.
at Glasgow, just to answer the chat.
Oh, I anyone who wants to, any of you three who wants to jump in with the next one before, while I get my thoughts together, digesting that.
If I could have the one that's the arched pose,
Sure.
that's in watercolor, I think.
Mhm.
So this was recently at the Hyattsville Pyramid Atlantic Center drawing session that has just been added on Saturdays with costumed opportunities. And I held this pose for 10 minutes. The person did not finish all of that in 10 minutes, but they did ink outline. And then during one of the breaks, they did the paint, and it just brought everything to life. And it was a really wonderful experience. And I also liked the other pieces by that same artist on that day. This was a really surreal moment for me. One, because, you know, I loved seeing the weird and wonderful things that I could challenge my body to do. But yeah, I made it 9 minutes and then I broke pose. But the thing that was really, really, really cool about this interaction was I found out afterwards that this artist had several published graphic novels, and I have read one of them. And so that was like just this feeling of, I don't know, becoming more a part of the art world than I previously was.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. I'm gonna stop my share just a second. Back to something. So would you say that you know, was maybe one of your goals as a model? Do you have any goals as an art model? You mentioned modeling itself as an art model being a bucket list. So, you know, as you've fallen deeper into that bucket, I don't know if that's the right metaphor. Have you started creating an art model bucket list? And I I feel like, you know, posing for an artist that wrote a graphic novel that I read would be something that would like get retroactively added to a bucket list just so I could cross it off.
Actually, yeah, it was never something that I would have expected to put on there, but it was a wonderful and happy surprise. I also really enjoyed the challenge of my first 4-hour pose. And that was really challenging. It's actually the Venus one, if you wanted to pull it up, Shiva. If you could pull up the Rockaby picture first. So I was at the Art League's Madison Annex, and Marjorie was the moderator, and she wanted to recreate this pose. And every time I look at it now, I just kind of laugh because neither of us noticed that she is propping her head up, and I am not. And so that was the day that I learned how much my head weighs.
Yeah, our heads are heavy.
Our heads are so heavy. And so if you want to go back to show Marjorie's, it was a really amazing time. At these drop-ins, everybody does different mediums. Marjorie was doing oils, and she just kept praising how it looked exactly like the painting that we were trying to work on. This was also a nice moment where you know, I was wearing a mask, but we got creative about how to keep making art with ignoring that fact. Another accomplishment that I've had was holding a pose for multiple weeks. So a class that met 2 weeks in a row, and I came back and got back into the same pose and tried to recreate the lighting and all that different stuff. So that was fun. One thing that I haven't done yet that I would really like to do is be sculpted. So I see Mo has an example of a sculpture, so maybe we can switch over to that. Is that much different from modeling for 2D art, or?
Well, it's when they do the kind of, it depends if they're doing a portrait. I would say no. I would say you got to bring the A game. You got to bring it all the time. You know what I'm saying? Even if it's a kids class, you know what I'm saying? Even if it's a quote unquote pro class, even if it's a quote unquote VIP class, sculpture, portrait, clothes. Anytime I go into class or something and be like, oh, I'll just go, this is different. I don't do well. So let me scroll over and see this. Oh, that's by Sarah. Yeah, Sarah Irene, the Great, gives me mad love in Frederick. So this one, which is funny, everyone's like, that doesn't look at all like you, to Sarah.
It
And so she's
totally
like,
does. It totally does. I've seen you do that.
right, that's what I was thinking. So I'm like, okay, but someone literally during the class was like, why are you idealizing him? And Sarah said, I'm doing it on purpose because she made 3 versions of it. She was like, I want this for my resume. So I'm making Mo look, I'm idealizing him.
Mhm.
So, and also Sarah's environment, some artists are very relaxed. Sometimes I'm as, I appreciate that comment. Sometimes I'm really rigid in life and in everything I do. And Sarah has the perfect like chilled out atmosphere and her own studio. So that one is just like, she made me look like, you know, I did have to wear that, but she made me look like I get money and I'm smart. So geez, I love it. And I love her so much.
She catches that action of you like tilting back. It's alive even as it's still.
Wow. Yeah, I'm looking at it now. Pardon me, everyone, for swiping back and forth. But yeah, she does sculptures for churches, for Lutheran churches.
She does a
She's
lot of
colossal.
she does a lot of public works.
Yeah, she's no joke.
Mhm.
So it was truly an honor just to sit there, man. Yeah. Yeah, that was a great one. Mhm.
I like it a lot. It
Yeah,
really,
thanks.
I can see the idealization for sure.
You're
And
right. When you really look. Here, look, I'm trying to hit the pose now.
yeah, yeah, I was gonna look and see if it was kind of there in some of your other. No, I've seen it in other, not any of these, but I've seen it in other drawings of you. But I've seen you pose like that.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite head positions. A lot of people enjoy this one, but I definitely, as you know, Sheba, and a lot of artists looking, that's one of my favorites. So I appreciate that. I really do. Yeah.
Jason, do you have a bucket list for modeling or any goals that you have?
I do. Some of them I've accomplished. Others I'd like to continue to do. One of my biggest things that I wanted to get off my bucket list when I first started modeling was to model outside, and I got to do that a couple of times. And it was really interesting because I had an idealized, picture in my head of how that went. And then I had the reality when the weather was extremely cold or extremely hot, and realized sometimes there's something to be said for a nice warm studio or a nice cool studio, depending on the depending on the time of the year. I was supposed to have been sculpted a while back. I threw my back out, and that just wasn't going to happen. I would love to be able to do that. I would love to be able to model in another city, San Francisco, New York, if I'm ever visiting, to drop in on that. Um, those are the types of things I'd love to do more group sessions with different models. I've done those a couple of times, and I've always enjoyed working with another model. Truth is, for a variety of reasons, that a lot of places don't do that, or they only are able to do it, a couple of once or twice a semester. But generally, that's just it, just that, and just to keep pushing myself. Just in terms of my career, always looking for that thing that's just a little bit, and it doesn't even have to be um, something incredibly spectacular, just something new and different that I haven't tried before that just kind of builds to my overall experience.
Sorry. Set my screen here.
Oh, that's a good question.
Oh, that is.
Can I take that one?
Oh, totally.
So the face down smiling one, Sheba.
Mhm.
I think it's at the top or near the top.
This one? This one?
No,
Nope.
no. Sorry.
Oh, this one.
That one. Yeah. So this was again at the drop-in that where it all started at the West Side Markers in Cleveland, and we met in a gallery and just used their space every Monday night. And it was a really nice vibe. It was a meetup group, and so it was open to anybody. You could just drop in for $10. And anyway, I was the model that night, and they were playing some like bluegrassy folk music in the background. And I don't remember what song it was, but it was hilarious. And so through the entire pose, I was smiling, trying not to laugh. And this captures that. And I thought that that was wonderful. It was a really raunchy song, is what I remember. And so it ended up turning out really, really well. I could recognize that moment in that depiction.
Mm-hmm. It's a really good one, and I've seen you with your hair like that too, so I really like that.
Yeah.
It shows that aspect of your personality and your sense of style.
They also really captured my bracelet and my earrings well too.
Mm-hmm.
That was a fun day.
It is. It is good. And it really shows like your lankiness too, and how you you can drape over things like a cat. I love that. I am going to um ask y'all a little bit about some of your struggles as a model. Starting from the top, just on my screen. Just to pick on you, Jason. Um, I've asked you about this in the past off screen, so maybe you can share with the group a little bit about what it's like as a male model in a female in the world of like female preferred model bookings. We've touched on that in private, and as a model coordinator, it's something that I'm keenly aware of, and I try to mitigate that situation as much as I can. Um, partly by just like not asking an entire model list, like if a female model is preferred or if there's a gender specific requirement, I try to figure out why rather than, making the booking request about gender. I try to make it more about the ability needed. Um, but in a general sense, what has your experience been like?
Oh, it's something I definitely noticed ever since I first started modeling. Now, I kind of started modeling at a really weird time. We were just getting into the 2007, 2008 recession. A lot of art schools were cutting classes. So, between that and being a new model period, the odds were kind of stacked against me. But it's definitely been something I've noticed. I know I spoke with David Quammen when I first got started. He suspected that the breakdown of the model pool was probably 60% male, 60% female, 40% male, might have even been skewed a bit more. I don't know what it currently is now, but I can tell you that, I mean, because several artists who were booking models even said, yeah, hey, Jason, I definitely want to use you for a class. Um, I would like to go ahead and just kind of push you on hold for a bit until I find a few female models to book under certain, throughout the semester, and then I'll put you in wherever, which, that didn't bother me at all. But there have been times where I was bumped. Because somebody wanted a female model and perhaps they weren't available at the time. I got a booking, and then the artist said, "Oh yeah, by the way, I kind of found the artist or the model that I was initially looking for. So yeah, go pound sand. Lots of luck." And I definitely don't want to treat it as like a battle of the sexes, like Billie Jean King versus I think it was Bobby Riggs. I'm probably screwing that up. But it is definitely something you notice, and it's in doing my own research. I understand in different parts of the country, it's actually the complete opposite, where male models are, for whatever reason, more in demand. There's a glut of female models. Um, so I understand that there's only so many opportunities out there, and I totally get that. Uh, there is a preference for female models. Um, I don't get discouraged. I just realize that uh, I just have to keep looking for opportunities, and I have to be a bit more industrious just because there are perhaps more limited opportunities. And I just go ahead and, try to put a positive spin on it and keep going for those opportunities and hope that I do a good enough job that people want me back. And I can even tell you there was I just thought of this. I had a friend, she doesn't model anymore, but she modeled about 12 years ago. And I remember she really needed some money at the time, and she said, "Hey, can you, introduce me to, some of your, the art schools and the drawing groups?" And she said, "I promise, I'm not going to take work away from you." And I'm like, "There's no way you can take work away from me because you're in more in demand than I am. You are not taking anything off of my plate by any means."
Mo, do you want to expand on that with your experience or?
Um, yeah, well, first of all, you made a great point that maybe in other places it's the opposite. I never thought about that, but I know they used to say back in the day, and like during certain sculptures, they would use a man and then instead of a female, and then put female body parts on it.
Mhm.
So yeah, I mean, we all know what it is in this area, and I just have to be so thankful that I get booked as much as I do. You know what I mean? I can't compete with it. Someone's, and also artists have expressed to me when they don't know who I am, like, oh, you don't have curves, Mo. It's too much. It's all triangles. And I have had people walk out and stuff. And but you know what? Your question was challenges. Sometimes, like when people walked out, which has happened frequently when they saw it was a man. But you know what? I just have to be very thankful that I'm so fortunate that, you know what I mean? They're just like, all right, we want a female 70% of the time, 80% of the time. But I'm so fortunate that they're like, the 20% of the time we want a male, let's call Mo. So I know what it is, and what am I gonna do? Just be thankful, you know? But Jay, what are your thoughts on when people have a specific model that they want?
So Sheba and I actually had this conversation because she had a type of request like that where they were requesting a female body. And I really appreciated that she didn't want to just, answer it for me. And so, we came up with a phrase that, I use these pronouns and this is my gender, but I was assigned female at birth. And so that and attaching photos of my past work, I feel like kind of covers the bases. But in other areas where it's like so for DC Art Model Collective, there's a search feature. And so, artists and schools can filter by what they want. And I've checked the box for non-binary. And if they're searching for just female models, they're not going to see me. And that was a choice. And it's one thing that's been really interesting is, you know, being misgendered during a class, or noticing someone attempting not to use the she pronoun, but instead they would switch to the. So look at the torso, or look at the way the light hits the foot. And for me, that was fascinating, that it was easier to see me as an object than to see me as a genderqueer person. So, did you want to speak about objectification or your experiences as a Black male model, Mo?
Absolutely. Also, what you were expressing, Jay, what I found is sometimes when I'm like, okay, you got to hire Jay, they're the greatest new model on the scene. And sometimes I find artists or groups are like, well, she, and I'm like, they, but here's pictures of them. You know, I use the term femme, but I like what I'm taking notes too. So it's like sometimes people are still like, well, what am I going to see, Mo? Like what? And I'm like, I'm just telling you, they're the best. I've seen them model. So
I appreciate that a lot.
yeah, you know what it is. Like, what am I going to do? But I also like these comments coming in. Boom, boom, boom. The answer to your question about being African American, you know, that's just, I've always been African American, so that's not it hasn't been an issue. And sometimes I feel more often as people are looking, you know, at me like down for being Black, African American, I feel like it's more that they just look down on me because I'm a model when they don't know me, and they think that a model's a lowly profession. So I've had not really too many experiences where people were didn't like me because I was Black. I have had people that felt some type of way about me and did not enjoy me, maybe because of my confidence, or they were talking to me a certain way because they just felt I was a lowly model. So I have had that a lot where I'm just like, I don't know why you're treating me like this. It's not because I'm Black. And I have had that. You're treating me like that because I'm a model. But I like that comment that said, when I model with a female and we're on two different stands, guess where everyone goes?
Oh, I've been there. There was something I was telling Sheba, and it was funny too because it was a venue Sheba was working at, and she just got off the podium. She was ready to go home. I was getting ready to hop on, and there were two podiums. It was me and a female model, and all the artist easels and artists who were evenly distributed throughout the room all just grabbed their easels and and moved it to the other end, and it wasn't even subtle. Like you could hear the easels being dragged across the concrete. And I was like, I'm just watching everybody like I'm parting the Red Sea. And I'm like, is it my aftershave? you know? And you can't help but feel like a little like not discouraged, but just like you know?
I had a weird conversation with an artist at a drop-in once, because I had commented that I was excited that I had seen the week before I was modeling, the model had been male. And the artist said, well, you know, it's like eating your vegetables. You got to do it.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
This is so fascinating because as a model coordinator and as a model myself, I'm now in a position where I can think about how maybe there are things that us artists and coordinators can do to help mitigate some of these conflicts and structure our events and our programming in ways that, don't present male and female models as a choice or alternatives, but rather we can set up, a drawing space or a posing environment that is, you know, welcoming to both, and in a group environment where we have like models going on the stand, you know, male, female, you want to do a balance. That's initially what you're thinking about as a programming coordinator. But sometimes you forget that people's unconscious bias is going to come into play. And, you know, one or two artists might feel like taking a break, and they really, really were able to push through the last model because they were very inspired and they just happened to really like that female model. But they would have taken a break sooner. And then those two artists taking a break at the same time as the few artists who really don't prefer to draw male models will just like empty out a room. And so one or two people acting individually has become like a group acting in response to a person. And I don't think people think like that. They don't intend to, but it is something we should definitely think about. And the organizers, you know, we can plan around that. We can do things like set up dividers. We can structure the room in a way that it's like not easy to just up and leave. We can swap models in and out, like tag team them instead of one in front of the other. There's just some things that we can think about more. So I really appreciate hearing those thoughts, and appreciate I love that feedback. Thank you. Are there any other challenges that any of you have experienced that you are open to talking about these days, such as like how your body may have changed versus when you started modeling to now? I have my own stories about that, but you know, not all of us are as young as we used to be.
I can chime in for
Yeah.
struggles. If you could bring up the Conte crayon one. So obviously everybody can see my face right now. Yep. And you've seen the other portraits that I've had. This one was a recent depiction from while I was wearing a mask during modeling. And so this has happened several times where artists choose to imagine a face instead of drawing what they see. And so that was a challenge for me because it felt like I didn't need to be there. Like they were just going to draw whatever they were going to draw, and it didn't actually matter if I was in a pose or not. I mean, that face looks nothing like mine. And on the one hand, you know, the artist and I talked about it, and they said that it was just their preference to add and make it more complete. But it felt a little, it put a lot of distance between me and this piece, and I just feel disconnected when I look at it. Like it doesn't look like it's me. And so just to circle back to wearing a mask, my partner and I are disabled and immunocompromised, and so I still mask during anytime I'm out of the house. And that has been one, challenging. There's people that, you know, want to do portraits, and so they won't hire you because that's not possible with the mask. And so I totally understand that. And I really, really appreciate people like Eric Westbrook that'll book me repeatedly regardless, and draw what they see. So I think that just to segue into the aging question, you know, I used to have a lot of energy. I used to work all day at a national park, hiking and teaching and singing songs around the campfire. And then I would bike 3 miles and dance for hours at the local contra dancing and bike back and then work 13 hours the next day. And now I'm very sore and I'm very tired, and I'm very sedentary. And so for me, modeling has been encouraging that even though I'm not as physically fit as I used to be, I can still use my body in a way where sitting still is actually a skill. And so that's been wonderful for me. I did want to ask Mo, you had talked about your hip. And it seems that's an issue in general for models that have modeled for a long time. Could you give me some tips on how to avoid that? Or just like what causes it?
I can show you what causes it.
I can, hey, help me say the word correctly. Contrapposto is the worst, whatever, however you pronounce it.
Contrapposto. This is right here.
Contraposto? Is that how you say it? That's however you say it, that's going to do you in. Period. Let me see the spelling. Contrapposto, grazie. Arrivederci. Mi chiamo Mo. Yeah. So only advice I would give, not advice, but for me, that contrapposti. And then when I came on the scene, I was like, when I came here, I'm like, why am I so popular? And it was only because that was when Desi took a break. So I was so busy, like trying to prove myself. They would be like, Mo, really exaggerate that hip. And I'm like, yeah, man, well, working, you know what I'm saying, 8 hours a day, 365. I would, I have expressed this to several models. There has to be a way because they'll slip it in. They'll be like, when you were doing gestures, that was great. So can you really, really exaggerate it? It's natural, right? It's natural. Just look natural. But no, I would say I express to people that come to me for advice on that. At some point, there has to be a way that you say, no, you can get them done in gestures, I would suggest, on the 5 minutes. But then when it becomes a pose that you have to hold for 4 weeks, and then there has to be something. And also in the beginning, when you hold the pose, the first minute, if you're like, this is not going to work, you have to move it then. And just stretching and taking care of yourself. So that's what I would respond to that. Thanks for asking. Okay.
Well, that reminded me of something else that we talked about. Something you mentioned just now, Mo. You mentioned when you're giving advice. So do you often give advice? Or do you find yourself in a mentorship position frequently?
I like how you're asking the question and you literally live it 50,000 times more than me. No one asks you, Sheba, how are you doing today?
I'm doing
Everyone says,
great.
help
I'm
me,
doing great.
Sheba, help
Thank you.
me, give me advice, help my life, give me gigs, give me advice, mentor me. Yes, I do find that. And thanks to you, Sheba, and your demeanor since we met all those years ago, I said, I'm going to copy Sheba. And everyone here knows that I pattern my life around you. And we've had several talks. And you always say, Mo, I'm only here to help all the models in every way I can. And so you're right. People do ask me a lot of questions, not as much as you, but take it for advice. But I appreciate you, Sheba, for leading the way. And yeah, they always ask me, and I handle it how you would be proud of me. So yeah, it's true. It's funny because it's true. Yeah.
Jason, you've been expressing to me offline a desire and a willingness to offer advice. And I know I told you all I wasn't going to talk very much, but I am going to take a moment here to just plug Jason for himself. Jason used to keep, he has, in his words, let it get a little dusty, but I find that you know, when you write on the internet, it doesn't get dusty. It's timeless. So when I was a baby model moved to the DC area recently, you know, if we're going to talk about mentorship, um, I looked for it anywhere. I went down to Mocha. I talked to David Quammen. I spoke to him many times. He gave me lots of good advice. You know, I talked to other models when I could. So the point here is Jason used to keep, and I hope he will start it again, a wonderful blog. And it is full of all kinds of really excellent advice, from what you should bring to a gig, from, you know, the trials and tribulations of finding work, from, you know, the experience on the model stand, and just, you know, thoughts that we're all composing while we're on the model stand, but we never put to paper. And he did. He took the time to write out those thoughts, and I found it very inspiring over the years. And I've found myself recently going back and reading those things, and they still hold true. So I'll be dropping that in the chat. But Jason, what made you start that blog? And Um, you've mentioned wanting to continue offering that advice, and where does that come from? You want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I'd be honored to. And thank you so much for the lovely comments. That was really heartwarming. I really appreciate that. Like I said before, praise from Caesar. No, I really enjoyed your comments. But yet, getting to what you were saying, this goes back, and I'm dating myself here, to MySpace. And I had a MySpace profile, and I believe there was like a pseudo blog feature on there. And I initially started writing not about modeling because I wasn't a model yet, but just because I had had a breakup with my girlfriend at the time. And I found like writing anything was just a very therapeutic way to kind of get, these feelings that were building up inside me out on paper. And I found that as I started modeling, I went ahead and said, there's not a whole lot of information out there for prospective models. There's a couple books on the subject. There were other models, of course, who have blogs that were more established than mine, certainly, more well trafficked. But I thought, I just like almost like just even for my purposes, just to kind of highlight the things that I learned, my experiences, what I would tell somebody else. Because what we do is something that 99.9999 whatever percent of the world eh, it's completely alien to them. And to kind of just explain like, things that happened to me that would not really happen to anybody else except for other models who immediately know exactly what it is. We've all, been there. Things like, hey, when should you put on your robe? What kind of things do you want to create a model bag? What kind of things would you like to keep in there? Treating your modeling like a business, that if you want to get more bookings, you need to treat it just like any other day job. You need to I called it the three P's: be prompt, be prepared, be polite, be willing to work with people, but also know your own boundaries, what you don't want to do, what, maybe physically you can't do. Speaking of, getting older, when I first started my blog on WordPress, I was in my early 30s. I'm almost 50 now. The body's changed. Uh, I've gained a lot of weight that I am fortunately starting to lose. I'm starting to hit the gym, build more muscle that, hasn't been there for a while, but there's just certain things that I can't do anymore. Towards the very end, towards the beginning of the pandemic, it was very challenging for me to do one standing 20-minute pose, let alone a series of several hours of them. My knees hurt, my feet would go numb. I'm so thankful, Sheba, when I first started my first gig at Washington Studio School a couple weeks ago, that the first pose was a seated pose, just to go ahead and get baby steps. Let's just go ahead and take it back. We don't have to go from 0 to 60. Let's just go out for a nice Sunday drive. And but I thought there's just like so much out there that's just not readily accessible, and the bulk of it is applicable to anybody who's looking to model there. And it just got to the point where there were some times as I was winding down the last pose for the night, I was thinking, hey, here's something that happened today. As soon as I get home, I want to blog about it. So I figured, the best way is to put it out on the internet and where anybody can, see what I have to say.
That's very helpful. Jay, you're not a new model, but you're new to the DC area. And we've talked about a lot of things, such as like the process of getting set up for online sessions. So
Mhm.
I feel like you're kind of in this in-between area where you may be mentoring folks yourself, but also still actively seeking advice from other models to get things going. So can you talk a little bit about what sorts of things you seek advice-wise? Um,
So for me, the business aspect is new to me. I'm used to working seasonal or part time or internships, those types of things that are very temporary and very well structured. So you're going to be here for the school year, and then maybe we'll uh, sign you up for another year, maybe not. With this, it's 100% on how much I can hustle, and so Mo has given me a lot of contacts, which was really helpful. And I specifically asked before I reached out to these people, like, hey, is it okay if I drop your name though? Like, I'm just texting this person out of nowhere. Can I tell them why or where I got this number? And so I feel like that has also just been a really, helpful connection. I have appreciated our conversations, Shiva, about payment or Eventbrite and creating events, and your advice about spreadsheets and keeping things in writing, because at the moment I'm still, working with one artist at a time or scheduling things on my Google Calendar. And so having the idea of how to scale up when I need to is really important. And I'm going to start implementing those measures now. But yeah, to jump off about the Zoom sessions, because I really enjoy doing the weirder gestures, I came up with this idea of, it would, it would get me to practice yoga more if I knew that other people were going to show up. And so I'm going to hold the poses for a minute, sometimes 2 minutes, and anyone who pays to join can sketch or whatever material or media they want to do. So that's that's what I'm going to be doing on Friday mornings and Wednesday evenings.
I'm going to drop that link in the chat right now in case anyone's
Okay.
interested in that.
Yeah.
So Jay is advertising these through their Instagram. So what I just dropped in the chat was a direct post link to that, which I actually can put up on the screen here.
So while you're doing that, this is a good moment to talk about censorship. I tried.
Great time.
Yeah, I tried to type this post, and the algorithm and the AI monitors were able to read it, and so they would block out things that had anything to do with money, things that had anything to do with payment platforms like Venmo, things that had anything to do with length of time. So those are all trigger words that they associate with sex work and other things. And so models just get swept into that category. And especially with our nude images, we often get posts taken down. Or recently, I've actually noticed that they do this kind of subtle and really annoying passive aggressive thing where they just won't post it. It's not even that it gets taken down. It's that, oh, this post is still posting. And I'm like, you've been posting for an hour. And when I try to, close the app and come back, it's gone. You had zero intention of posting this. And if I remove the link or if I change the phrasing, it posts right away. So trying to figure out my way around that has also been a challenge. And again, Shiba has been very helpful in talking about, I have a backup account. I make sure that, I'm having my contacts with people outside of Instagram in case I get locked out of my account someday. And all of that is valuable advice.
Yep. Definitely been shadow banned as a model, have the same fight with my posts, posting artwork. I've all but retired as a photography model due to that aspect of it. I mean, it's my favorite work. I can't share, I have a personal website. I've lost my Stripe. I temporarily lost my Stripe account, which means I can't process any payments using Stripe, which is any credit card payments, which means I'm reliant on PayPal, which could potentially think that I'm encouraging trafficking through micropayments. There's just so many issues with existing in the online world as a model. It's they really want you to not exist because it would be a lot easier if you don't do those things. Then they don't have to try to decide if what you're doing is, sex work or modeling. They don't want to have to think about it. They want it to just be easy because they want algorithms to run everything. And I self-censor so much in my daily life, and we've had conversations about this. It's sorry to butt in here. It's something that I feel very strongly about. It's so frustrating as a model. And I feel like it's now getting a little more traction because it's happening to artists too. Artists are seeing their artwork being taken down. Um, because it's a nude image, it's a nude figure. It doesn't need to look human anymore. It's just the content. Ah, yes, lively chat about that. So, yeah, totally. Yep. Martin has many accounts with to differ to stratify his work, and they still get him. Um, yeah. So it's definitely a challenge that we're all facing. It's a new modern challenge. Um, but it's a technological challenge, and it's kind of ironic because 5 years ago, at the very least, probably more, maybe almost 10 years ago, but maybe not that long ago, Jason and you and I were talking about um the concept of like as a model, it's very hard to like as an art model. So photography models put together a portfolio in the same way that a fashion model would put together a portfolio. You work with photographers, some photographers you pay to do a concept that you want, some photographers you trade with, and it's a mutually beneficial arrangement for both of your all's portfolios. But as an art model, um, pretty much 98% of your work is going to be something you're directly hired for, and not something that you will initially have the opportunity to do as a portfolio building exercise. Occasionally, you have those wonderful moments where you're gifted a piece of artwork at the end of a session, or you are hired by an artist to do an extended session, and maybe halfway through you can make the verbal arrangement to trade part of or the whole session, or maybe a future session for an artwork or two. Um, but those don't always occur at the beginning. Usually you're doing it for money, for the experience, or just to sort of get your foot in the door. And like certainly if you're in a classroom, you can't ask for it, you won't ask for it. You might not even want any of those pieces because those are for a class. Those for the student's portfolio. So the alternative we have is to maybe photograph the work. And when I first started modeling, that was such a huge faux pas. Like just going around and looking at the artwork with your eyes felt intrusive, on the breaks. Um, so let alone like, taking an extra long second to the last break to ask folks if you could photograph their work before they packed up really quick because they didn't want you to see it right at the end of class. So that was something a group of us, on and off, would talk about, when is the best way to do that? And always with anything, consent is best. Informed, enthusiastic, ongoing consent is best. Ask for it and receive it. It's basically like, what would you like as a model? For us as models, it's very important to receive the opportunity to give consent when people want to take photos of us. Um, and I, as a coordinator, I facilitate that process between the models and the artists and the artists and the models more now. So, I've had to come up with terminology and processes to make that a safe exchange here at our school. So, Jason has a dearth, like not as much work because prior to COVID, we were still existing in this art models aren't really online situation. We don't have social media, we don't have cell phone photos of artwork. The artists would send us photos by email if it was something they really liked and really wanted us to see. And we never knew quite when it was polite to ask to take a photo of students' work. So, Jason, I pretty much just put a bunch of words in your mouth, but do you want to speak a little bit more about that, about like how learning to ask might be a process?
Oh, definitely, definitely. And for me, it's a little different than perhaps some other models because when I started, I think the very first, iPhone had maybe not even been out for a year. Most people still had flip phones. If they even did have a camera, it was very poor quality, so it wasn't even an issue. For example, the picture you post right there, that's not a picture I took. That's a picture a coordinator at VizArts took and put on his uh, website that I was able to go ahead and find. So it wasn't anything I took. And initially, when I started out, I was strictly working at art schools, mostly the old Corcoran before the merger or the takeover by GW. And I didn't really feel okay even asking to take pictures because A, it probably wasn't even allowed. It's their students. I didn't want to, even if perhaps it was permitted, I'd be a little bit leery because um, I don't want to single out one person as, their art of me is more preferable. And, if I don't want to take a picture of anybody else's, it's because you suck and you're an awful artist. No, 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 no. But I don't want to go ahead and give that impression. I also don't want to take a picture, or I was hesitant to, or I didn't want to take a picture in a academic setting because what if there's a picture that I really liked, but the professor later critiqued it and said, "Hey, yeah, technically here's where maybe you could improve," and I'm like, I'm kind of sending mixed messages to that student. Well, Jason the model liked it. Well, Bob the professor said, well, no, yeah, you could definitely buff up your artwork. And it was the same thing that even, and then mentality extended even to drawing groups where I'm like, yeah, there were definitely some pictures I wanted to take, but I felt, well, if I take a picture of this person's art, are the other people maybe going to feel upset that maybe I didn't find their art as, you know, photography worthy? There was also to me, initially when I started, it felt weird getting back into my robe and wandering across the studio looking at other people's art. It just felt, very surreal. I had gotten more comfortable with it towards when I went on hiatus. Again, it's like you said, enthusiastic consent. Hey, I really like that picture. Would you mind if I took a picture of it? And of course, they would inevitably say, "Oh, it's you. Yeah, sure, go right ahead, do it." But again, I make sure to ask them first that it's okay with them. And that one that you're hovering over, that was the one I was thinking of at the time. This is actually me probably at my heaviest. I would probably want to say that's around 2019 or so. But it was a drawing of me that she was getting ready to pack up, and I saw it, and I'm like, I really like that. Would you mind if I took a picture? She's like, yeah, sure. And it's just so weird sometimes to, I'll get dressed, I'll go back out, I'll get on the metro, and there's been a couple times where there's been a person that was in the class and said, "Hey, I want you to take a look at my one of my sketches of you."
Yeah.
But I also
Oh, my bad. Go ahead, Jason.
no, no, no. I was wrapping up. Go ahead, Mo.
Just real quick on because you made me think of something which I appreciate is like for like what my theory is. Okay, things have moved. First of all, the questions coming in the comments, sick. I love it. I love it. Um, Everything is moving exponentially. A lot of people don't agree with my theory, so and that's fine. But what it is for me, I always remember what helps me is even the laws can't keep up. Everyone knows I love music. So like and everyone knows I love hip hop. So if you made a hip hop song and when I was 86, you'd be 18 years old, you signed a contract and give you $5,000, you sign all your publishing away,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then that's 86. Who would have thunk that right now that song would be in a reel on Instagram streaming and you wouldn't get a penny? And there's no way the loss can catch up. So I view it as kind of, it helps me to constantly evolve because even with the pictures, like, you know what I'm saying? Who would have thunk that someone, when you're just nude, could. So then you have to evolve. How do we handle this? And
Mm-hmm.
then you have to evolve even more, which I think is positive. Like if someone already is looking down on me, like this guy's just a model, he don't have any money, it doesn't matter. And then I'm like, yo, you can't do that. And if you do, you got to pay me a lot of money. And if it's below the belt, you can never do anything with it. So I just think with that and with the as she was expressing and Jay with the internet and with the taking stuff down and like in the beginning we're taking pictures. I just think it's just a good thing. It just keeps you on your toes. There's no way we can imagine what's going to happen with the technology. So, but yeah, that's it.
And Mo, you just reminded me of something. There have been times where I've caught the telltale flash of a camera, and when I busted them, oh, I thought the course included reference photos. No, it didn't. You got caught.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, what can you do, man? It happens to all of us all the time. And the more you work, but Sheba's gave me great advice. A lot of the other models gave me great advice, and then I had to decide what I was going to do, and I do it. So it works good.
Jay, your experience might be a little bit different from those of us super old folks on here. Um, how have you found that in in the post-COVID, more social media aware world that you the expectation that a model will take photos, or your thought process on whether or not folks would even mind if you take photos? Do you find that contrasts with the experience we're mentioning, or do you feel that you have a different way of approaching things?
Yeah, so for me, it's always been a pretty friendly interaction. When I was first starting out in Cleveland in that drop-in, um, the moderator was really strict about phones away the whole time. And there was actually one time that somebody was drawing on their iPad or whatever, and the instructor gave them tape to put over their camera. And I thought that was wonderful and very respectful, and I appreciated them so much. And then they were also working on so many different mediums in the same room. So like I learned about silver point for the first time, and people were comparing their tools. So somebody was using watercolor pens and all this different stuff. So there was a friendly camaraderie with the artists, and they were happy to include me in that. Now I have a business card, and I give it out at the start of every class. It has my contact information on it, as well as my pronouns and some examples how to use it. And so as I'm passing those out, I make an announcement to the class that, like, if you want to work with me on a project, I would love to talk about that. We could do something outside. We could do something over Zoom. We could arrange a costume session. Whatever you have in mind, let's talk. Let's make it happen. And then also, if you choose to post any of your work from today, please tag me in it. And so that's kind of the intro to that. And then during the breaks, I'll go around. I know Jason was talking about not wanting to play favorites or whatever. I just take pictures of anyone that will let me. And I'm very, very, very sensitive to any comment that I might make about the piece. So just like how I think there's etiquette to, not talking about the model's body, because that's none of your business. But there's also personal connections to the work, and I'm not the teacher and I'm not critiquing. But I've definitely appreciated when, instructors have asked me questions about the lighting or the pose, or I've felt included in the conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Are we moving to questions now?
Oh, we can move the questions. I'm just, if you have anything that you want to ask, feel free to. I'm just consulting my notes.
And Jay, that was a really great point that, hey, we're not critiquing, that's the one thing that I always keep in mind. That was just a wonderful point that you brought up. We're not critiquing, we're not saying anything's good or bad.
Sheba, should I just address one of the questions that were asked?
Sure, please feel free. If you'd like to, we can move on to the questions from the chat if you guys would like to, but there are a few things that you all had mentioned that you wanted to talk about that I can drag those up if you'd like, or we can move on to the questions from the chat as the group would like.
Sure. I just wanted to close up this topic with another like icebreaker type thing. Is I will sometimes start taking pictures the first break or the second break. And so we'll get into a conversation and they'll be like, oh, no, you don't want a picture of this. And I'm like, actually, I do. I really enjoy seeing the process. I like seeing the decisions that you make, how it evolves, what changes. And that also gives me the chance to, if somebody packs up really quick and leaves, I still at least got a halfway finished documentation of their work.
That's a good point.
Yeah, yeah. Sheba, I'm trying to, yeah, okay, thanks, Sheba.
No worries, I got you all.
And I know someone mentioned that I may have done something on the chat, but it's all good. That didn't happen. So, but the question, I see Danny asked a nice question too, but I want to keep it brief as always. An answer to the other question that I saw back in the day that was great, which was, it seems upcoming model wanted to ask, it seems like you know each other very well, and it's very surprising. And I've come across that a lot. And anyone who's a model who, if they're looking to move up, something that helps is, as Jason expressed, there's only 1% of us, maybe 2% that know what we're talking about. So we do know each other. We do hang out. We do talk all the time, right? We do have different personalities. We do have individual personalities, very strong ones.
Mm-hmm.
But the way I look at it, which helps me, is any artist, a musical artist or actor that's on a certain level where they're only 1%. When I was a kid, I used to be like, why do big actors only date other big actors? It never works out. Why don't they just date a normal person? Who else can they talk to? I just saw a picture with LL Cool J and Paul Simon just chilling. They chill all the time. So that's how the models are. And that would help any upcoming model's career, I believe. And Danny's questions and the conclusion on that, how do I handle when people sneak photos? It's a rough one. It's a really rough one these days. What I do is, I was taught from a beautiful female model when I was modeling with her to make sure that I get to see the secret ones. Or some people just come up and I'm just like, these days, you can't do that now. I'm sorry, I'm sorry. Can you delete it? Or I'm going to need this amount of money. And then you're welcome to take as many as you want. But it is a real headbanger. And it does cause a lot. The conversation goes on for a little bit longer than I would enjoy sometimes. But you know what? We got to do what we got to do. And that's just how it goes. No one's going to change their personality. So we move forward and we let them know.
Well, any models on this call and any artists on this session as well who are wondering what the studio school's policy on photos and photographing the models is, we have posted in each classroom a list of, classroom guidelines for students and faculty when interacting and working with models. And in those guidelines, we mention that students should have their cameras away while the model is posing. You're welcome to photograph your artwork in between times, because I know a lot of times you'd like to photograph your gestures and then wipe them out. There's the culture of keeping track, which is a very healthy culture of keeping track of your progress, and rather than saving and holding sacred, older work, simply document it and move on, let it go, build up your work on the bottom. And it's absolutely fine to take pictures, but just wait until the model is no longer posing. And if you do want to take a picture of the model, ask first. Say, do you mind if I take a photo of you? Even if you're trying to do this is my drawing and the model's in the background, that counts as a reference photo as well, because it's a personal reference for your memory. You're referring to what the pose was, even if you're not going to continue drawing from it. Most models will be willing to allow it. And also most models will have a flat photo fee. It might vary from model to model. My personal policy is I don't like people to take photos of gestures. I prefer photos only of the longer poses. And I just charge per pose. So if it's a multi-week pose, you only got to pay once rather than each week. Other models might have, a flat photo fee for the class per person. They might have a per pose fee. They might say gestures are fine, but you got to pay per pose. Each model is going to have their own comfort. It's up to the individual model, and that's something for you to negotiate with that model based on their comfort level. And then any payments, most models will ask for a modest tip. The range is $5 to $20, might be more, might be less. That is a transaction between you and the model, and you arrange the payment method with them directly. We don't set up or arrange any of that for you, but we do encourage you to have that conversation with the model if that's something that helps you in your artwork and it's something the model is comfortable with. So I'm gonna, if y'all are ready, I'll go through some of the questions we've gotten in the chat, and maybe that'll bring up some of the other things we might talk about. I'm gonna scroll all the way back to the top here. I'll just read some of these comments aloud for everybody's enjoyment. Stephen mentioned that Jason's story of falling out of and now getting back into modeling struck a chord with him. He says that his own modeling kind of trickled away while he was dealing with some issues with life and then COVID, and he's thinking about trying to find his way back in. Does that resonate with you, Jason? Are there some, pieces of advice about your process of getting back into modeling after being away from it that you might share?
Oh, definitely. Well, no, Stephen, thank you so much for the thoughtful comment. I'll be honest, for me, I'm having to start from square one, just the post after COVID, the landscape has changed. A lot of the some of the drawing groups either dissipated, new ones perhaps took their place. It's been roughly 3 years since I last modeled for anybody, so I don't expect to be on their radar. At least for me, it's like starting over again, which means I'm starting from square one. All the hard work, the stick to itiveness that I needed just to get my foot in the door in the first place, I've got to muster that again. And, I just want to say best of luck to you on that.
Our next comment was from Sandy, and they said that they love hearing the model's feelings. They inspire her or them, and they feel such a connection and happiness when they get to paint the model. Thank you, Sandy. It's really good to hear. Ron Roberg had a question. He wanted to follow up with something that Jay mentioned. How difficult is it for a model to control their thoughts or emotions during a long pose? How do you stay in the moment, and how do you keep your sanity? What's about you? This kind of falls in line with what do we think about when we're on the model stand? How can the model stand provide an avenue for escapism, or where do our thoughts go? Jay, since that was kind of directed towards you, do you want to start with that?
Sure. So I guess, of course, it would depend model to model. For me, I usually have a habit of picking a point that I'm staring at. And so that can kind of sometimes act as like a grounding thing. It also helps me to put my head back in the same position that it was after breaks. But I guess just in ordinary life, if I ever have moments where I'm sitting, I often will, have to write something down. I have to write down my to-do list, or I have to remember to call this person or schedule a text to get to this person in the morning or whatever else. And because I know I can't move, it's pointless to think of those things because I'm going to forget by the time I have to get off the stand. And so for me, it's just this really freeing moment of enjoying the space, enjoying the natural light, the artificial light. I often feel like I'm auditing the classes. The instructors are giving valuable advice, and I get to just soak it all up. And sometimes I'll have a song stuck in my head, but yeah, that's about it.
Jason, does modeling trigger any thoughts on the model stand, or
Oh,
how does?
definitely. And Jay, you had a great point because I do the same thing. I always find it's easiest to keep still by focusing on a particular spot in the room. But I've done the same thing in terms of coming up with a grocery list. What am I going to eat when I get home? I'll have a song that plays in my head on repeat for like 10, 15 minutes just out of the blue. But to me, it almost feels like active meditation. Your mind can wander, and but you still need to, you can't, your body and your face can't betray what you're thinking because you're supposed to be standing still, yet imbuing your poses with emotion. The very first session I did, which is the one with me in the purple shirt, towards the end, they were playing classical music, and I had this bizarre vision that I was watching the end credits of some movie that was in French and in black and white, and the credits were going. I have no idea where that came from. I have never had it since. It was just with the classical music playing, it was just the most surreal thing. I've had out of body experiences before where it feels like I'm floating away, and all of a sudden, my body starts to shudder a little bit. Um, it's it's really tough to explain because your mind can just go to so many places, and it's just so imperative to go ahead and if you do it enough, you can almost let your mind wander, but still be grounded at the same time, if that makes any sense. And there's been times where people have come up to me and said, do you act? And yes, I have acted off and on in the past. And they said, well, it was just something you were doing almost mentally that you could tell was projecting life, even though I wasn't moving. So yes, it does happen, and your mind can go to some really weird places sometimes in terms of um, what's going on through your head.
I would like to just comment to whoever said, that it's mental strength. For me, I have tried to meditate in other settings. I used to live at a place that was a yoga retreat. And so we, gave classes, there were meditations, sound baths, all this different ceremonies and stuff. And I just couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. I hated the breathing techniques. I would get fidgety and want to do yoga poses instead of sit still. And, even just there are some moments in my day where I realize I'm going from audiobook to phone call to music to audiobook, and I just never allow for a silent moment. And so for me, I have never been able to have a quiet mind. The quietest that it has gotten is on the model stand, and that's been a surprising gift. It wasn't a skill that I strengthened.
A similar experience. Audiobooks and phone calls while I'm driving. I listen to music while I'm working. It helps me focus. I find being on the model stand very much, I think you said grounding, it is definitely a grounding method for me. It helps give me that space where I can sort of sort out my thoughts in an ordered way. Sometimes it can be frustrating because I'm working on a project in my head. But at least I've gotten to work through and tease that process out while, in this 20-minute segment of time, 20 minutes on, then you take a break, then you hydrate, you drink water. I was much more hydrated when I'm modeling than I am when I'm not modeling. And, I found modeling to be something that really helps me stay healthy, both physically and mentally, because it provides structure to those things that I find really hard to make in my life otherwise, as we all drink water.
Mhm. Thanks for the reminder.
So,
Yes.
I mean, I've answered that question 100 times. What do you think about on the model stand by, literally saying what I think about, and it's everything and anything. But when, I don't fixate on a place, I fixate on a range of of uh of view. So like I think about where I am in space rather than a point that I'm staring at because I have a peripheral vision limitation where I actually can't turn my eyes to the side. So I am limited in what I can see, and that really helps me focus on where I am in space because I can't accidentally look further this way with my eyes. I actually know where my head is based on what I can see. So I don't, and if I focus on a spot, my eyes lose their depth perception very quickly during a session. So I have to constantly move my eyes. And so I'll tend to look down. And artists ask me a lot of the time, stop moving your eyes or can you please? And so that's why I look down because it's easier for me to just look in a range toward down. So that's me. I'm going to move on to the next question from our chat because we have a lot of really good ones in here. and a lot of really nice thoughts. Sandy again said, thank you for sharing your feelings. Often we don't get to hear from the model. Stephanie Potter is a fellow model, and they said, as a fellow model, I'm so grateful for this discussion. Well, we're very happy that you're here, Stephanie, and nice to meet you. Someone was asking about Gavin, but we did get them that information. Stephanie said that the sculpture looked just like you. Martin has a great question about how does music influence you all? We've kind of touched on this a little bit, but you want to take it from the top? Jason, Jay, then Mo?
Yeah, I already answered it with the black and white
Right.
face one.
And you kind of mentioned it as well, Jason, in your just earlier. Mo, how does music affect you while you're posing or influence your posing?
Well, I'm glad you asked. So I used to do music, and sometimes I think of a song, and a lot of people here. I see Sarah, the supermodel, just gave a shout out piece. Some of my peoples know the poses I do, and sometimes I'll just think of a song and I just go for it. Man, it happens very rarely, but everyone's been in the zone. So I guess that's how music is. I just think of a song and then bam, think of some Fat Joe, think of some, whatever it is. Some John Coltrane, whatever it is, Michael Jackson. So yeah, it'll help me give me a boot. It helps me to like feel the pose. Like if I'm thinking of a song, if I'm not thinking of a song, I can be like thinking of my woes. But if I think of a song, I think of the moves, and it gets me going. That's how it helps me.
I love that. So that's also, how do you decide on a pose? Are there other ways that you might decide on a pose, Jay or Jason or Mo?
For
I
me,
just,
oh,
go ahead, Jason.
no, go ahead, Jay. Go ahead.
I've just been learning with every class what my pinch points are, about how, even if something is comfortable for the first minute, that doesn't mean it's going to stay that way, that more padding is good, but too much padding can be bad. And so I guess it's just a learning experience, and I continue to follow other model accounts to see the types of things that they do. I will often comment like, hey, how long was this pose? That looks really difficult. or they were able to add a lot of detail. Was it done afterwards, or was that a really long pose? And so yeah, for me, it's just learning. One of the biggest things that I appreciated was having multiple places to place my weight. So whether that's, having my hand down and being able to shift my weight to the hand and then to my right glute and then my left glute and then whatever, like instead of always being on one point and then losing a lot of feeling past that, being able to slightly shift so that it doesn't change the pose, but it does change the blood flow for me.
Mm-hmm.
Jay, it's so funny you mentioned that about the thing, because that's the exact same thing I did if it's a seated pose. And I feel like it's given me some grief that, just the whole thing with your glutes, just the way you kind of either adjust it, maybe tense one up a little bit, let the other one relax for a little bit so you don't change the pose, but you could actually feel like, okay, I'm getting some blood flow back to some of the affected parts of my body. Um, um, uh, for me, I love gesture poses. I love to be able to do some real action oriented poses. The thing that I like about them is because even if I pick a pose that's like, ooh, I shouldn't have done that, I'm only holding it for a couple of minutes uh, um, uh, at the very longest. In terms of longer poses, if you take a look on screen at the two pictures in the right hand column, that was what's been called as my superhero pose by some people. That was always one of my defaults, whether my hands were on my hips or crossed, or maybe I had my, like a thinking type pose. Um, For longer sessions, definitely seated. Like Jay said, I'm very well aware of my pinch points. I know when I rest my head on my arm, I know it's going to start to tingle after 12 minutes. After 15, it gets a little funky. Closer to 20, yeah, I can't feel my arm anymore. So
I really appreciate your superhero pose. That seems like a good contrast to the Italian word that I can't remember.
oh,
Contrapposto.
To save our hips.
Oh, thank you.
Moving down, I'm gonna, Stephen had just shared a thought where he had a similar experience to you, Jason, where he was scheduled to pose with a female model. They weren't working together because it was a large class. They were on opposite sides of the room. The instructor gave them a choice of who to draw with, and you know, they went with their unconscious bias. Janice shared a question. When the life drawing room vibe is high, it's great. And when the vibe is low to flat for an unknown reason, do y'all have any 3-drink minimum plan Bs? Like, it's a great way to ask that. Love it.
Right, right. Very PC.
Yes, I bring that hip flask. Yeah, I put it together. No.
I will say this because that question was so PC. I tried that. There's, I say you can't really do it. You can't really do it. I mean, you be want to sometimes. I mean, if everything is like perfect, like I went to one place and I came in, very awesome people. They said, Mo, sit down. They had cheese, they had champagne, they had red, they had rosé, they had sparkling. Jay knows exactly where I'm talking about. Crackers, and they were just like, you got to sit down. And I'm like, I don't drink on the job. I don't know what to say. Let's go. They're like, we may not even draw you. You got to relax, Mo. And I'm just like, I can't relax. So I would say overall, you can't really go there. There may be a time when like the last seating, you have 20 minutes and everyone's like, all right, you can chill. You got to also read the room. But I would say in general, I can't do it. But that's just me.
Yeah, I've felt like it's hard to sometimes not bring your feelings into the classroom, and I try to be self-conscious or be conscientious of, you know, with a normal job, I feel like it's a lot easier to sort of separate, compartmentalize your life. But with modeling, it's really hard to compartmentalize your mental energy in a way that doesn't affect your posing, because posing is so much about energy transference. So unfortunately, sometimes my internal struggle and strife can be what brings the vibe down. And, you know, sometimes artists use that and comment on it. Sometimes it affects the classroom so much that I get talked to by the instructor afterwards. So that's only rarely happened, but I feel very poorly when that happens. And, you know, just try to be gentle with myself and understanding that that's part of being a life model is I bring my life to the model stand, and that's what everybody gets. They get my life. So try to be professional when I can, but which is most of the time, I promise. But occasionally, you know, life just comes with me. Jason, did you want to add anything to this before I move on with other questions from the chat?
Oh, it's definitely something that I know we've all touched on it, but yeah, there's definitely, like you said, energy transference. And, you know, the highs, when it's high, it's high. When it's low, it's a struggle. I remember one of my very first gig at a new place, I was a substitute for another model. It was supposed to be a female model, but she wasn't able to make it. She said, "Hey, Jason, can you take it?" The model coordinator said it was A-OK. So I did that. So new model. They were expecting another model. So the energy in the room kind of felt funny to me because I was honestly in a vulnerable place. But what I thought was, okay, you know what? I'm just going to give it my all. I'm going to try to make those gesture poses as dynamic and full of energy as I can. And at the end of the day, at least I can say that I tried. And fortunately, in that case, it worked out. But there's others where it just felt like the vibes just weren't there. And it felt like, almost felt like I was looking at a fish tank without any fish in it. Like I felt like superfluous. And I hate to say it, but it was just like, can we just go ahead and get this thing over with? Then we'll just, you hate to have that attitude, but it was like, okay, I think this is just going to be a wash. And it's rare, but sometimes it happens.
It's true. Stephanie Potter shared a link to their Instagram and their drawing group, which is Figure on Diversity, run out of Gainesville. Stephen shared that, yeah, one of the occupational hazards modeling is to have your timer not go off. You're just going and going and going, and you just, where is this pose going? And you got to start wondering about that. When is the break going to happen? And you got to just take the risk and look at that timer and realize it's been 40 minutes, and you just shake that out and be like, well, that was a bummer. We talked about Sarah, who Sarah was, and we shared some links about how to find them in Contrapposto. And Martin asked again, how do you feel when an artist fractures your form when you reflect on their work after a session? And I think what he's talking about is, sometimes an artist can take aspects of your pose and superimpose it with poses that are from somebody else or other parts of your posing, or draw your poses out of sequence or overlaid with each other, or wipe out half of it and then continue another one and sort of create like almost a creature. I think the word he uses is a fantastic beastly, which ties in nicely with the demo he's going to be doing in a couple of days with us, actually tomorrow evening, I believe. So I'm not sure, Martin, if you want to expand on that, but we've talked a little bit about how it is to have like your face changed or your body changed or your face erased or parts of your body erased or not drawn. Is there anything further we want to add to that?
You asking me to talk?
If you'd like to, did you want to
No,
talk about?
no. I think you explained it perfectly.
Okay.
Like I'm always like I take forms and I invent them in my studio, and sometimes when I work with the model, I do that. And most of the models that I work with are pretty comfortable with that because they know how I work. But I'm always curious to know what artists, when I'm working with them, out of that context, how they would feel when they come and look at my drawing and they've seen that I've made their neck 12 inches longer, or added 20 more vertebrae, or maybe put another leg on their body. I see the form as a point of departure for an amoeba-like thing. And it's just interesting. I'd like to be like to know what they feel about that. Like, do they feel they've been torn apart, or there's that, because I love the idea of the missing fragment, the whole idea of like the Greek statue, the lost element that makes you want to imagine what it would be like if it was there. I could go on with this for like 4 hours if you wanted me to, but I think you all get what I mean.
I can respond to that. Shiba, if you could bring up my Instagram again.
Sure.
I have an example as my second pinned post. It was from a gesture session where I was doing yoga, and the artist just continued to draw. And, if they only completed half of the pose, they just moved on. And I really liked this effect. I see it like, I don't know, a dance.
Mm-hmm.
And then on a completely separate note, when people chop off my head or only do my feet or whatever, I appreciate that they have something in mind and they're not going to let the mask or the pose distract them from the focus or the practice that they're aiming for. So yeah, I really appreciate seeing what people come up with, and yeah, that's it.
Yeah, in my experience, I've found that, that superimposing of different poses or pieces alone, or I like all of it. To me, it's very interesting to see how the voice of the artist comes through in what they've chosen and how they've chosen to present or compose their drawing, rather than just like directly copy me onto a piece of paper or me into clay. I worked for many years with a great sculptor who taught down at the art league, and always, like, what you should be going for is what's gonna survive after the piece rolls down the hill. So my partner has a joke about, like, oh, it's a Tanasi because there's no arms, no head, no legs. It's just a torso with like everything broken off. So if we see anything like that in a museum, he's like, oh, that's a Tanasi. And he's making fun of my friend, but it's true. There's a reason that's a beautiful segment. It's what's survived, but now it's something that's copied, because what's preserved has become what has been preserved over time has become like the simplification of the form. That removing the extremities, seeing the extremities extraneous. But I love this composition style. I love how you have to look at it and piece everything together, and it's a melody, it's a puzzle, it's a larger composition than any single pose. And I think Martin's work is beautiful in the way that he does that. So we'll go back to our chat, unless either of you gentlemen have anything further. We have a lot. I'm going to try to wrap these up since we're getting really close to 9. Don't want to keep everybody on too late tonight. So, but many of these are really good questions. Sandy said, can we ask the models? They've done live paintings with models and then entered them into a show. And she was lucky enough to get a few awards. And her feeling is to share the wealth and send the model money. Do we have thoughts about the best practices of that, or how to do that, or if we feel strongly one way or the other? I've seen this topic come up before in other avenues. It's certainly a good opportunity to discuss that as a group. I see you nodding, Mo.
Yeah. Great question. Again, I know some people are moving forward. I like to thank everyone that came out, because you know what I'm saying? It makes me feel like everything I'm doing is right. And I know you all could have been doing something else. The artists, the other models, to have you all is really, I really appreciate it. I really do. Yeah, about the sales, I think that's another theory, another addition to my theory about things evolving so fast that it's just up to you. Because these days you can now say to the artist, if I help you sell it, how much are you going to break me off? You know what I mean? Like, I got people, I know someone who's going to love this and they're inquiring. So I think that that's something that's going to change really fast. We're going to figure out a way to get some type of publishing. If we sell a painting, if you sell a painting of me for $5,000, we're going to catch up pretty soon. You're not going to be playing my stuff on Instagram and a million views and I'm not getting any money 20 years later. So as of now, I think the way is you could break off the model something, but now it's not there yet where we have a standard. But I think that's something that hopefully artists and the models will move forward to. Like, hey, Mo, if I sell this piece for 7,000 or you help me sell it for 7,000, I'll break you off. So a little bit of publishing rights, but I think that's where we're moving forward to.
So for me, that hasn't come up yet, or at least not that I know of. That's another one of my milestones that I'm looking forward to, is knowing if and when a piece sells. So.
And that's a really good question. I honestly never considered it, because I know there have been a few drawings or paintings of me that have been entered into shows. I found about that, offhand later. So I don't know if they, won or not. That's a great question. That's honestly never occurred to me. So that you've given me something to think about.
Well said. Yeah. Nice.
I have thoughts on this. My thoughts center around the relationship and the negotiation between the artist and the model. Um, I used to, a little, tiny bit of background. I used to work as a waitress, and I value modeling and any job in the sense that I'm being paid for the time and the skill that I'm providing, rather than the idea of potential money. So, I would much rather, even if it seems like a ridiculous trade-off, I would much rather be paid for my time up front rather than, well, I might sell this, and if I ever sell it, I'll definitely pay you part of that or a commission on that or half of it or split it with you. I would probably decline that sort of arrangement, even if it was somebody that I knew whose work was guaranteed to sell, unless they had to get a buyer up front and it was a commissioned piece where, it was commissioned because this person wanted me or my body type or something like that. There's something unique to what I provided to this commission. And that was part of the contingency of me agreeing to the commission. So from my perspective, I don't like the idea of promised money. I prefer to work for something upfront that is known. And I also don't like the sense or the feeling that I somehow would have an artist owe me something later. That's not a relationship I want to have with somebody. I want them to be happy with the artwork we've created in the moment and then free to do with it what they want, in their own time. And we don't need to be tied together for life by the one business deal. We can be friends separate from having to talk to each other for business reasons because this piece might sell. I don't know. I wouldn't want that as a creator myself, as a photographer. I don't want to have to go back and find all of my models if just because I put a piece in a show and I might sell a print. And I'm fully aware that there are many other costs that go into being an artist and being a creative that are not just paying the model. I mean, there's your own skill as an artist, your own, life that you've put into your artwork and developing a skill in a sense and finding buyers. And I don't feel that models should be owed any of that percentage. But if it is an elaborate collaboration where the two of you have come up with the concept together and there's a larger discussion about the model giving their concept to the artist to bring to life, so that the two of you are literally co-creators and that you both own the concept together, that's when I would see that it would be important to maybe have some arrangement where there's a profit sharing, where you're more than just the model. You're actually like, I suggested this idea. And, we saw some of that last summer in Joanna Heffernan's exhibit at the National Gallery, and that was an interesting perspective to see. But that's my 2 cents on all that.
That I would just like to be hired again,
Exactly.
like if you had a success, then okay, that's great. Let's do it again.
Yep, exactly. Yep. I think we have time for maybe one more question, and then we're definitely going to wrap things up. So I'm gonna pull something out of here. See if there's anything else from other models that I've asked. Scrolling, sorry. V. Sigarich said, any recommendations? Someone who wants to model more for one of my groups is pretty good at holding poses and traditional male poses, but always has a frown or a very morose looking face. Also, has some odd noises when they get in and out of poses. I'll let Jason or Mo, speak on that, but that may come with experience. You can provide some examples to them of things that you find inspiring. But Jason, Mo, any advice?
You can go ahead, Jason.
No, I was gonna say you can go ahead.
All right, so the question is, like you said, they're looking for models, and they want to help the male model get better with those two things.
I think so. It looks like there's a model who is good at who's pretty good at holding poses. They didn't specify that it's males, that this model's males.
Yeah, I did see that question. A great question, and I did think about that answer. And I would say, you got to be frank at some point, because the person doesn't know. He doesn't know that he's every time getting up. Oh, he doesn't know, because gravity moves my face down. I'll be like this, and then I'll look like, oh, so maybe try just to be upfront because maybe the person doesn't know, and then just be like, you don't notice, but you're looking like this. So maybe try something I stole from Gazelle, have a permanent smile. Maybe be upfront, right? Maybe be upfront with the person, and maybe be like, moving forward, you have a habit, and some of the artists may think that you're not enjoying it. So you just got to be frank sometimes. It stings a little bit for me to hear these things, but maybe that'll help. They just don't know they're doing it.
It's their concentration face.
Right. And when they get up, they're in pain.
Yep.
But if you tell them, I would suggest that, and also because a lot of people just don't have it. They're just like, oh, I can be a model. I'll hire my friend and they can just sit down. Don't you want to do it? I'll pay you. Yeah, I can sit down. There may come a point when you have to just be frank, like, you're good at a lot of things, but this isn't the best. But I would just say, let them know. You got to let them know if they don't know. That's my advice.
No, Mo, I liked exactly what you said, because you don't know what you don't know. If nobody's ever told you this, because you can't see yourself from outside your body, you may be well aware of that, and I mean, God knows I've gotten out of some excruciating poses, and it's like, oh, it can't be helped. But it sounds like this is maybe more of a distraction to some of the artists. Maybe it's a bit more, the sounds and gestures are a bit more embellished, and maybe it hurt someone's conversation. That's always a tough conversation to have, because you don't want to offend anybody, especially if they don't know, if they don't realize they're doing this because they've never been told. Perhaps one thing, I'm just thinking, just from acting experience, particularly if it's a long pose, hey, maybe this is something I want you to think about in your mind. Pretend you're a whatever. Maybe that'll help kind of subconsciously elicit more of a non-morose expression. Might get them to either smile or look a bit more, thoughtful or something like that. That's all I can suggest. But I like what you said about, I think you're gonna have to tell them because they may not know.
Well, I'm going to share one more comment from the group, and then that'll be the end tonight. We're at 9:05 and I need to go home. Art Prensing said, besides payment, do you appreciate a round of applause at the end of a session or a follow-up to thanking you for the session? And how do you feel most appreciated? I think that is a fabulous, fabulous option. And I think we should answer by all of us here in attendance. Please turn on your sound and let's offer this trio of models a rousing round of applause. Please join me.
Hey,
come on now, don't be shy. There's 23 of you there. Turn
that's a
on
lot.
that
Thank you.
sound.
Yay.
Thank you so much,
Thank you guys
everyone, for
so
joining
much.
us.
Awesome.